Lanka are definitely a proud nation in that aspect. And with that, it is my honor and privilege to welcome a gentleman who we are very proud to call a Sri Lankan. He is the only Nobel laureate of Sri Lanka, and he will deliver the keynote speech for this morning. As a compeer, I thought I will wing it, so to speak, and just give an introduction about this gentleman. But he's so accomplished, and he is such a distinguished gentleman. His qualifications and his achievements had to be listed out and read. So, one of Sri Lanka's top scholars in quantum physics and development economics. He has a BA and MA from Cambridge, SM and PE from MIT, and a PhD from McGill University with a concurrent MA in development economics from Concordia and several honorary doctorates. He has won many awards across the world and is the co-winner of the Nobel Prize as Vice Chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 2007. So who better than him to deliver the keynote speech of this event? So ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege once again to introduce this morning's keynote speaker, Professor Mohan Munasinghe. So it's an invitation to you to deliver your keynote speech.
Venerable clergy, honorable ministers, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Ayubowan, Vanakkam, greetings. It's a great privilege and pleasure for me to address such a distinguished audience. Thank you for inviting me, especially the SLRC and of course the ABU. I have a number of slides to get through, so let's move on. First, let's talk about resource limits and unequal consumption, which are harming the poor and undermining sustainable development. There is a concept called the ecological footprint of humanity, which is the sum total of resources 8 billion people on this planet use up. And around 2012, we needed more than one planet, 1.5 planets to sustain us. By 2030 or around that time, we will need 2 planets worth. We don't have 2 planets, just the one. If you ask the next question, who is consuming these resources? You get this infamous champagne glass, which says 85% of the consumption is done by the top 20 percentile of the world's population. They are consuming 60, 70 times more than the poorest percentile. And some of the statistics are staggering. 1% of the world's richest own more wealth than the other 99%. We spend, for example, over $2 trillion on armaments, but less than 200 billion to help the poor. So we are spending 10 times more to destroy rather than to save. If you put those 2 panels together, you will see the facts at the bottom. We don't have enough resources to help the poor, because the rich are consuming more than one planet worth. So you have had broken promises by world leaders for the last 75 years or more. When I make this point at big conferences, world leaders are rather unhappy with me. But the fact of the matter is, in 1947, which was 2 years after I was born, there was the UN Declaration of Human Rights, very fine document. We have in 2015 the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which all countries accepted. but every one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are in that original document of 1947. This is why I say we have not made much progress. So how do we move forward? In 1992, at the Rio Earth Summit, I presented a framework called Sustainomics and something called Balanced Inclusive Green Growth, which shows us the way forward. It has been implemented over the last 30 years, and it is a useful way to implement the Sustainable Development Goals and to address not only climate change, but also all the other 17 Sustainable Development Goals, including poverty, hunger, and so on. First principle of Sustainomics is the Sustainable Development Triangle. Okay? So what do we need for sustainability? We need economic prosperity to raise the poor out of poverty. We need to protect the environment while we are getting rich, because we all depend on environmental resources. And also we need to make sure socially that there's empowerment and inclusion so that we distribute the benefits equally. That is the balance and integration of these three elements is the essence of sustainable development. But we can think a little further. If we unpack the triangle, we get essentially the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but I want to add another dimension, peace. So you have prosperity for the economy, you have planet representing environment, and you have people on the social side. These three elements are essential for peace. Peace is essential for sustainable development. And in a period when we are the closest humanity has ever been to nuclear World War III, which is a human extinction event, peace is very important. So, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, I won't go into this, everybody knows them rather well. I think media can help us implement the Sustainable Development Goals, reach the Earth's eco-civilization of the 21st century. And I would also add, and I will show you later, that I feel that Asia, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the global South are leading the way towards this. The second principle of Sustainomics is also important. It's about you and I. Sustainable development is like a mountain. So I call this climb the mountain. The peak is covered with clouds, but we don't give up. We don't say can't see, we don't climb. One step at a time, we go towards the top, and eventually we will reach it. Because many of the activities that we have are unsustainable, and each action we take can take us forward. When we leave the room, we switch off the light. We can turn off a tap. We can plant a tree. Many things we can do. We can do it at the corporate level within our companies, within our institutions, within our communities, and so on. The third and fourth concepts are very simple. The third concept is, in our own minds, we have to transcend certain barriers. The most important one is values. We have to replace unsustainable, unethical values like greed, violence, corruption, and so on. And I'm very happy that this government that we now have is committed to doing exactly that. There are other barriers in our own minds which I won't go through. The fourth principle is very simple. It's implement, implement, implement. There are many plans, including ones that I have made, which are sitting on the shelf gathering dust. So we have to implement whatever we propound. Let us also remember that we have to get all the stakeholders together. Increasingly, governments around the world are finding it more and more difficult to tackle the complex problems of sustainable development, climate, and so on. So we, civil society and business, because I believe that business is not part of the problem, it should be part of the solution. We have to work together with government to sometimes push governments to do the right thing. And media can help again here to catalyze this development. Just to tell you about the production side, because business is important, I have worked with some of the biggest multinationals, the boards of directors, the presidents. I've given lectures to them. There are 3 points which they all accept. Some of them don't practice it, but they agree that sustainability is the key to the future. Efficiency is very important in using resources because this is win-win. For example, if we have energy efficiency, we reduce the energy use, so there are less emissions, less carbon dioxide, and so on. Win for the environment, but at the same time we reduce our costs. So we improve the economy. That is also a win for the prosperity, and that is called win-win. Business is very likes this approach. And of course, ethical values, which I made the point before, and we have to start with young children. Education is very important, but we have to inculcate them with the correct values from the earlier stage. Now, let me also mention cities, because this is something that I've been pursuing in the last few years. One of the reasons why we are failing with the SDGs and so on, or not achieving our targets, is because countries are very big. National leaders can make promises, but it's much more difficult to deliver. Cities are easier to deal with. And mayors of cities, CEOs of companies and others can make promises and help to deliver it by working with the people. Digital platforms are essential. You as media know that without the digital technology, you cannot reach all the people. So we can ensure efficient resource use, livable spaces for people, smart infrastructure, energy, transport, and so on. I will also give you the example, 2 examples, because as I said, theory is important also, but we have to show the practice. And one is the Yangtze Delta in China. This is an area which is 4% of the land area of China, but includes 250 million people, or a large number of people. Major cities like Shanghai and Hangzhou and so on generates 25% of the GDP of China, which is more than Japan, more than Germany. And it has shown a remarkable progress over the last years, 100 years, towards sustainability. So it takes a long time. Started with subsistence agriculture, then it went into intensive agriculture after the 1950s, then industrialization, and all this time with the economic progress, the environment was declining. But after 2000, because of government policies, economic and social progress continued to improve, and the environment started to improve also. So you had the triangle being applied properly. And this is happening in a huge region of China. The second example I give you is a small city in Portugal called Guimarães. It received the European Green Capital Award in 2026 after 12 years of effort. How do I know about this? Because I was the chief advisor to the mayor of Guimarães. And over that period, through commitment, they have achieved the Sustainable Development Goals, or are well on the way to reaching their various targets. So this shows you small places, large regions can do it. We can do it too. Now, very quickly, I will show you why I think Asia and BRICS and the Global South are in a good position to show the way forward. If you look at the right-hand diagram, you will see something called the Global Economic Center of Gravity. This is where on the planet, if you add up all the economic progress in the various countries, where the center of gravity lies. In 0 AD, it was somewhere in Asia. Then by 1900s and 1950, it moved towards the West. Okay? And one of the primary reasons was colonialism, enormous extraction of resources from our countries, right? But after 1950, look where the arrow goes. It's going right back into Asia because of the growth of China, India, Japan, and so on. And that is due to development, not to colonial resource extraction. That is the proper way to develop. If you look on the left-hand side, I will show you that I think Asia has the economic talents to move forward. It has the respect for the environment because we are cultural, civilizational states, many of us, most of us, and we certainly have the social resources to do this. Just look at this picture from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in September 2025. Putin of Russia, Modi of India, Xi of China. This is Asia together, working together towards progress. Look at the way the trading relationships have gone. In the year 2000, the US was the largest trading partner of most countries. That is the blue map. By 2020, China has become the largest trading partner of most countries. If you look at the right-hand panel, you see that in 2023, more than 70% of global growth was generated by just two Asian countries, China and India. Look at STEM graduates, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. India and China are producing millions every year. Western countries, including the US, 500,000 or less, right? So these are precursors of the future. What is happening? We have in the past what I call an unsustainable unipolar world, hegemonistic. You had US and Europe at the top. BRICS and the global south was subordinate at the bottom. 15% of the global population controlled and led the way. 85% followed. But we have reached an unsustainable world because of this. So we cannot go on, okay? When leadership does not deliver the results, then we must make a transition. That is the logic of rational. If you look at what the leaders of the West have said, Obama said US is an exceptional nation. What does this mean? We can do whatever we want, right? Borrell, EU chief diplomat, made a very undiplomatic remark. He said Europe is a garden, the rest of the world is a jungle, all inhabited by slender lorises. But that is not the case at all. So what has happened since then? If you look, the BRICS GDP is more than the GDP of the G7 by far, by 50%. In PPP terms, which is a way of measuring economic progress. More countries are joining the BRICS. And we are moving to a multipolar world. The multipolar world is where the global south and BRICS are looking towards peaceful trade and prosperity for mutual benefit, for achieving sustainable development goals and so on. They are not interested in military interventions, in punitive sanctions and those kinds of activities. And there is an active process of de-dollarization taking place. Other currencies are sharing fairly in world trade. And what is more important is that we need a peace bridge, because as the world is in danger of falling into two blocks, which is the BRICS and Global South on one side, USA and the West on the other side, we need to build bridges because we want to avoid confrontation to move into this multipolar world where we have more dignity and so on. Just 2 points. There are threats to human extinction. I identified 2 of them. One is nuclear World War III, which I told you. So we have to reduce armaments. The other one is, of course, climate change, which is the theme of this conference, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. On the left-hand side, you see who has the largest military budget, right? And so on. So, there was the G20 summit recently in South Africa. Unfortunately, USA boycotted it. This was a chance for peaceful discussion. On the right-hand side, climate action. Just take clean energy. China leads by far the other countries. Again, the COP30 in Brazil, which just took place, boycotted by the US. So again, we need more leadership, leadership by the Asian countries, by the global south to push us in the right direction. I'll show you a very quick clip, which is an interview I did with Zane Asher, who is the anchor, international anchor of CNN. This was a primetime interview to US audiences. So I tell people in the US or to you in Asia the same story.
When you think about the sort of, the fact that we're seeing the world order, I guess, recalibrate itself in a way, in a certain sense. I mean, I gave one small example about several members of the Biden administration visiting Africa in a short space of time. Obviously, they're competing with Russia and China. Sergei Lavrov has been to Africa. I've lost count of how many times in the past few months. What are the implications and the opportunities in a world where it is multipolar and there are multiple spheres of influence, not just one or two?
I think the multipolar world looks more attractive to the global south now. I mean, I cannot speak for the entire global south, okay.
Yeah.
But
it's not a monolithic entity.
Yes, but the reason is that the existing world order, which has been more, since the Second World War, more unipolar kind of, but Western-led certainly, is not doing too well. There's lots of conflicts, economies are under threat, poverty is still persistent and so on. The multipolar world, particularly the emergence of the BRICS countries, gives the global south more hope, and that's why countries of the global south want to join this. This is more on trade, cultural exchange, peaceful economic ties and so on. I think they are a little tired of 500 or more years of colonial interventions, and these memories are still there in the countries of the global south. And other sort of aggressive interventions, and they want a more balanced world order. Now, there are a lot of opportunities with digital technologies and other new methods, which both have a risk, but also have great promise, and will allow the global south to have a level playing field. They will be equal and respected, have their dignity and self-respect restored. So, let me end with this slide, which basically talks about climate change. There are 3 facts, right? One is global warming is proven. The second fact is the poor will suffer the most. This is climate injustice because it is the rich who have put the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, but it will be the poor who suffer most, and Asia as particular. But there is a solution, and that is sustainable development. And that is why climate change is only one of 17 sustainable development goals, because climate change must be addressed together with all the other problems. It cannot be addressed by itself. I will just finish by saying we have to watch out for potential surprises, because with all this theorizing, there is still social unrest, climate, you have environmental problems like COVID-19, which we never expected, and so on. Nuclear disarmament is extremely important, and avoiding nuclear World War III. But I think the media can play a very, very big role in leading us to this world of sustainability, prosperity, and peace in the future. Let me end with this ancient Pali blessing from Sri Lanka, which says, may the rains come in time, which is environment, may the harvest be bountiful, which is the economy, may people be happy and contented, may the king be righteous, which is society. So my ancestors knew about the triangle many years ago. We are just rediscovering it today. I come from the Munasinghe Institute for Development. Please contact me if you need more information. Thank you very much. Nandri, Stuti.